The Marvel Cinematic Universe is a very special thing in the realm of cinema, not the least of which is because of how interconnected it is and how the various movies seem to spin off into newer movies in one giant tapestry of Marvel epicness. But because of all the characters that there are, as well as who is playing them, it can be hard to know exactly how old or how young some of these characters are. Not the actors, the characters. So, given all of that, allow us to show you the Marvel Cinematic Universe heroes from oldest to youngest. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 9. Thor. Thor is a god, and as such, his physiology works on an entirely different level from humans. Even though his youthful enthusiasm and boisterous character suggest the opposite, Thor is actually quite old. Thor isn't ashamed of his age, so he revealed in Avengers: Infinity War that he was around 1500 years old. And it's safe to assume he could live for many more millennia if something bad doesn't happen to him first. Loki noted in Thor: The Dark World that they live give or take 5,000 years, so that might just be his fate given how the God of Thunder manages to survive things. Of the big three, Thor is the only one still alive, and he'll be getting a fourth movie via Love and Thunder next year, and many are curious to see just what happens with Thor next. Number 8. Captain America. This one will take a while, so roll with it, okay? Captain America is now truly old. After defeating Thanos, Steve went back in time and decided to live out his life with the love of his life, Peggy Carter. When he once again showed up in the present day, he was already an old man. But even when he first joined the Avengers, Steve was already old, if not physically, then on paper at least. Captain America was born on the 4th of July 1918. He got frozen in 1945, awakened in 2011, and went back in time in 2023. According to official information, he then got to live to be at least 106. But here's where time travel madness comes in. So he was 27-ish when he went into the ice, right? And thus about 35 when Endgame came around, right? But technically he lived through his time in the ice, and thus was about 101 when Endgame happened. And then went back in time to be with Peggy in 1945, presumably, and then came back the long way around, another 74 years. So if you add all that up, by the time he passed, he would have been around 175 years in regards to time on Earth. Wow! Number 7. Bucky Barnes. Funnily enough, Bucky is originally a young sidekick to Captain America in the comics, but that's not the case in the MCU, where Bucky is at first the one who's protecting the small and weak Steve Rogers from harm. In a way, he's like Steve's older brother. Bucky was born on the 10th of March 1917. Thanks to the experiments conducted by Hydra, and to the fact that he spent a better part of the 20th century on ice, he still remains young, at least physically, when in reality, he's easily one of the oldest superheroes in this fictional universe. Due to him being on ice, it's technically hard to state just how old he is in the overall sense, meaning his conscious living. But if we were to take his lines from Falcon and the Winter Soldier to a literal extent, he's over 104 years old. Number 6. Nick Fury. Nick Fury is one of the older human Avengers who ages naturally, as he was born in 1951. Though Nick Fury doesn't have superpowers, he's certainly an important part of the Avengers, and was the one who decided to bring them all together in the MCU in the first place. Avengers Endgame takes place in 2023, so he would have been 72 years old. But he disappeared during Thanos' snap, so when he appeared briefly in Endgame, he was 67 years old. In the comics, he's technically even older than that, as he was a part of World War II alongside Captain America via his Howling Commandos. And not unlike certain other Marvel characters, took the Infinity Formula to continue going on despite the world vastly changing around him. Number 5. War Machine. James Rhodes is another character who ages naturally and didn't disappear when Thanos snapped his fingers and decimated the population. Rhodey was born in 1968 and would have been 55 during Endgame. Rhodey is War Machine in the MCU and has a very similar suit to Tony Stark as Iron Man, but is a few years older than his best friend Stark, which is why, in many ways, he acts as a kind of big brother to Stark, and an ally that is usually much wiser than Stark is. Sadly, not unlike certain other characters on this list, Tony is gone, and it's going to be up to Rhodey to live up to the legacy of Iron Man, which he will do in the upcoming Disney Plus series Armor Wars, which will deal even more with the fallout from Endgame. Number 4. Black Widow. Natasha Romanoff is another character in the MCU who ages naturally, just like Nick Fury. She was born in 1984 and would have been 39 years old in Endgame, making her about middle of the line, but still on the younger side of the Avengers team. And for the record, that's actually only a few years older than ScarJo is in real life, as she is currently 36. There's a storyline in the comics saying that Natasha was born in 1928 and keeps her youth and an enhanced longevity of life from a serum, but the movies didn't introduce this storyline, so Natasha is one of the younger Avengers. And since she died in Endgame, her story sadly ends at the age of 39. But in her new life, she's apparently now going to sue Disney for what happened with her solo film. So, yay? That's one way to stick it to the mouse, man. Number 3. Gamora. Infinity War took place in 2018, and Gamora would have been 29 years old in Zahobere years when that movie took place. It's unclear whether Zahobere years are the same as Earth years, but if they are, she would have been 29 years old and one of the younger members of the team. She's most likely younger now, as she returned as a younger version of herself in Endgame, and it seems as though she's there to stay for future MCU movies, although it's unclear exactly how old she is currently. You can blame time travel nonsense for all of this confusion. We know that she'll be back at least in part for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but as for where Gamora goes after that, that's hard to say. James Gunn said this would be his last ride with the Guardians, but things could change. Number 2. Groot. At first, you might think that Groot is the youngest MCU character around, but one has him beat due to technicality, because we honestly can't say how old Groot was when we met him in Guardians of the Galaxy, but we do know that he died at the end of that film, and he was starting to grow back, literally by the final scene. Fast forward a few years to Volume 2, and he was said to be about 3 years old. And then when you get to Infinity War, where he was part of the Snap, he was 5 years old. Yes, you could argue that 5 years technically didn't pass between those 3 movies, but that timeline is already messed up, so why bother? Number 1. Vision. This is where things get really trippy, age-wise. Vision used to be one of the most powerful superheroes in the MCU. That's not a bad score, especially considering how young he was. Vision only came to life in 2015 after Tony Stark had created Ultron. Vision then joined the team and fought alongside Iron Man during the Civil War. He formed a romantic relationship with Scarlet Witch. Unfortunately, Thanos killed Vision in Avengers Infinity War 2018. By the time it happened, Vision was only 3 years old, even though he didn't look and behave that way. And recall that the Vision we met in WandaVision was a projection, not real, and White Vision was a recreation of sorts, so technically he was even younger. Try and wrap your head around that. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at the MCU and the characters that reside in it? Are you surprised by the canonical age of some of these characters in the MCU? Which ones did you think were older or younger than they looked? What movies and characters are you most excited to see next in the MCU? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.